Hello everyone. So today's topic is also from the hormone section. In the few last previous classes, we have seen the chapters like diabetes, the parathyroid hormone, the androgens, the oral contraceptives, and so on. So this would be the last topic from hormone section, after which we will be moving on to the chemotherapy. So this particular topic as per se is very important from the perspective of your examination, and all sort of question like essay type question or short notes or pharmacological basis type question may be expected from this particular topic. And you cannot for sure leave this topic and go ahead. Okay, so please concentrate on this topic, thyroid and anti-thyroid drugs. Our learning objective would be, you should be able to say, you should be able to understand what are the thyroid hormones, then from where it is secreted, where it is synthesized, and how the synthesis or the secretion is regulated. Then there is a very important part which is peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. That is very much important, so you should be knowing that how it happens. Then metabolism of the thyroid hormones, where there is involvement of many enzymes, so you should be thorough with that. Then the pharmacological action, as any drug has effect on the organ system of our body. So we will discuss what are the effects on different organ and tissues in our body of what? Of thyroid hormones. Then what is hypothyroidism and what is hyperthyroidism? And in case of hypothyroidism, what effect it produces in different organ and tissues? And in case of hyperthyroidism, again, what effect is being produced in the different organ and tissues? What are the symptoms of patients having hypothyroidism or having hyperthyroidism? Then at the end of the chapter, we will be discussing about the various drugs used for the treatment of hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism, the individual class we will take, individual drug we will discuss with its mechanism of action, adverse effects and uses. So coming to the main topic, first we will start with the anatomical location of the thyroid gland. So when we are discussing the thyroid hormone, it has to be released from some gland, and that gland's name is thyroid gland. Again, this secretion of thyroid hormone from the thyroid gland is regulated from the pituitary or by the pituitary and the hypothalamus. So that is the anatomical location regarding this gland is particularly located in the anterior neck, and that may span from C5 to T1 vertebrae. So this is the thyroid gland which spans from C5 to T1, and it's an endocrine gland having two lobes, the right and the left lobe, and then there is that the right and the left lobe is connected with a part called as isthmus. So that this is the isthmus of thyroid gland. It gives the H shape, or you can say it gives the butterfly shape. So this is thyroid cartilage, these are the lobes of thyroid gland, so left lobe and right lobe, and then this is the isthmus and this is the trachea. So this is the all about anatomical location in brief of thyroid gland. Next, coming to history of the finding, history of the discovery of thyroid gland, and then various diseases related with that. The particular word has come from the Greek word for shield shape. The meaning is shield shape. If you see, you can find in the earlier days, these type of shapes were used for as a shield. Okay, so from there it has come. The gland, the thyroid gland per se, was first ever recognized when it was seen that there is an enlargement in the area where thyroid gland resides, and that the enlargement of that particular area was because of the enlargement of thyroid gland, and that enlargement was associated with the symptoms or changes in eye and heart. So when this was observed, the enlargement around the area of the thyroid gland and the changes in eye and heart, then that led to the finding of the thyroid gland. Parry was the first scientist who saw a patient in around in 1786 having the thyroid enlargement. But he did not publish his finding until 1825. Then later on in 1835, the Graves, another scientist, Graves, he reported the disorder. And later again in 1840, Basedow reported this disorder. Then the term hypothyroidism was fully described much later in 1874. So the finding was way back in 1786, but because it was not published, then later it was founded by Grave and Basedow, and then hypothyroidism was described in much later in 1874. To introduce the topic, we will deal with the physiological part of the thyroid hormone. Then slowly we will shift to the pharmacological aspect. Thyroid hormone is much essential for the overall growth of the body. It has almost action on all the organ system of the human body. It affects especially the CNS. It maintains metabolic homeostasis and influences almost all organ function. Thyroglobulin, remember this word thyroglobulin. I will be using this particular word throughout the chapter. So thyroglobulin is a storage vesicle where there is storage of T4 and T3. And from here only there is a release of thyroid hormone. Needless to say that T4 and T3 are the thyroid hormone which are secreted from thyroid gland. T4 is known as thyroxine, whereas T3 is known as triiodothyronine. The parafollicular cells of the thyroid gland, they secrete calcitonin. Then there is thyroidal secretion of T4, that means thyroxine is secreted, and this thyroxine is converted to T3. This I was talking about the peripheral conversion in the earlier part of the class. So T4 gets converted to T3. This is the peripheral conversion which occurs. And T3 type of thyroid hormone is more potent, is more active, and has more affinity towards the receptor which lies in the different organ tissues, especially in the liver, other tissues, and other local places. So the serum concentration is regulated by TSH. The serum concentration is regulated by TSH. Whenever there is more of TSH, then there will be inhibition of the release of thyroid hormone. We will see in the end of today's class that how it is regulated. Then we have hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism is a state or condition when there is excess of thyroid hormone, when there is increased amount of concentration of thyroid hormone. So that condition is known as hyperthyroidism. Whereas hypothyroidism is a condition where there is decrease in the concentration of thyroid hormone. So deficiency of thyroid hormone will lead to a condition known as hypothyroidism, whereas increase in the concentration of thyroid hormone will lead to hyperthyroidism. Coming to biosynthetic pathway and release of thyroid hormone. This particular figure is again taken from Goodman and Gilman. The similar type of figure you can find in another book like K.D. Tripathi and Sharma and Sharma. So here we have the thyroid cells, the colloid, there is apical membrane of the cell, there is basolateral membrane of the cell. So these are important to understand how the whole pathway goes on. First there is uptake of iodine, or you can say it is iodine transport. In many books it is written as uptake of iodine. So this iodide, the iodine which is present in the body is in the form of iodide. So this is the form of iodine which is present in the body. Now this is transported inside the cell along with sodium by the help of a symporter. Remember this name. This is a symporter known as sodium iodide symporter. Symporter means it carries two ions together in the same direction. So that is symporter. So sodium iodide symporter takes iodine or iodide and sodium inside the cell. Now once it gets inside, from inside to the colloid, it is taken by another transporter known as pendrine. Another transporter known as pendrine. So that happens at the apical membrane. Apical membrane, this happens. So from here, it's taken to the colloid. Then what happens over here? This process is mediated through thyroid peroxidase enzyme. Thyroid peroxidase enzyme. And there is involvement of hydrogen peroxide also. So when the iodide reaches in the colloid, there is formation of hypoiodus or the iodine, and this is taken to thyroglobulin. This is taken to thyroglobulin. TG is thyroglobulin, and then iodination of this happens. Iodination happens, and then there is formation of DIT and MIT. That is diiodothyronine and monoiodothyronine. Okay. Now that resides in the thyroglobulin, and this process is known as iodination. This process is known as organification. Now from another the same enzyme, thyroid peroxidase and hydrogen peroxide, there is coupling. There is coupling occurs. This is coupling. So coupling occurs of two DITs or one MIT and one DIT. So when there is one MIT and one DIT, then there is formation of T3. When there is two DIT, there is formation of T4. So this T3 and T4 forms here and reside and is stored in the thyroglobulin. Now, upon stimulation, there has to be the release of this T3 and T4. And how it happens? See, this thyroglobulin is a resorption. This colloid resorption occurs. Colloid resorption occurs again inside the cell, and there the deiodination occurs. There is breakage of this, and then there is the release of DIT and MIT, upon which there is deiodination of DIT and MIT happens, which will cause the free release of iodine. Okay. Then there is another, as I told, is a peripheral conversion. That there is involvement of deiodinase enzyme, or there is a deiodination of T4 to T3, and then this T4 and T3 combinedly will be secreted out. This is secreted out or are released. So this particular figure represent how iodide is uptaken, and then how the series of process occurs, after which there is formation of T4 and T3, and then there is the release of T4 and T3 in the blood or serum. Once again, I'll just summarize it. So there is an involvement of sodium iodide symporter. By the help of this symporter, the iodine or the iodide is taken or uptaken inside the cell along with the sodium, and then from the cell, from its apical membrane, that is the same is transported to colloid by the help of the transporter pendrin. From here, there is involvement of thyroid peroxidase enzyme, and that forms hypoiodous acid, and then again there is the formation of DIT and MIT and is stored in the thyroglobulin. That is known as iodination. The first is iodide transportation, whereas there is organification. It is not written here, but in another book you will find the same. Then there is formation of T3 and T4 by coupling, and then the same is released by the help of colloid resorption, where there is a deiodination, where there is a deiodination of T4 and T3, and then later on it is secreted out. Now, if you will see this particular box, here you can see there are inhibitor also. So these are the drugs which inhibit a particular step of the iodine synthesis or release. So perchlorate or thiocyanate, these drugs inhibit the iodine transport. The propyl thiouracil and the methimazole inhibit this step. The same drugs inhibit the coupling also, whereas this colchicine and lithium and iodide itself inhibit the D step, which is this one, colloid resorption. Then dinitrotyrosine inhibits this E, which is the deiodination, whereas propyl thiouracil inhibits the deiodination of T4, which one is this one, and then iodide also inhibit the secretion of T4 and T3. So here you see the propyl thiouracil inhibit the iodination, coupling B, C, and F step. Now we will see the steps one by one. The uptake of iodide. Diet iodine is in circulation in the form of iodide. So when there is decreased thyroid stored, when the storage of thyroid hormone is decreased, then there is increased uptake of iodide. Administration, when iodide is administered, then there is decreased iodide uptake by decreasing the sodium iodide symporter expression. When there is more of iodide is given administered, then there is inhibition or suppression of sodium iodide symporter, which will cause inhibition of iodide uptake. This we will also see again later on. Then oxidation and iodination. Iodide ion is converted to iodine, and then enzyme linked species of hypoiodous acid that I told. Then pendrin, there is apical transport of iodine from this to colloid. Then there is formation of MIT and DIT, which is called as organification. Then there is formation of T4 and T3. Two DIT molecule causes the formation of T4, whereas one MIT and two DIT forms T3, and then is stored in thyroglobulin. This is thyroglobulin being cut. And the enzyme involved is thyroid peroxidase. Secretion of proteolysis. Proteolysis, this is by the help of megalin. This is by the help of megalin. This is transported inside, and then there is secretion of T3 and T4 in plasma upon TSH action. When the TSH action appears, then there is secretion of T3 and T4. By the help of lysosomal thiol endopeptidase, which is selectively cleaves thyroglobulin to secrete T3 and T4. The secretion of proteolysis, there is endocytosis of colloid from the follicular lumen at the apical surface by the help of megalin. So this is the megalin, and this is transportation occurs. Then there is a fusion of lysozyme which contains proteolytic enzyme. There is secretion of T3 and T4 in plasma upon TSH action, and then there is the release of MIT and DIT, and then deiodination occurs by the help of the enzyme deiodinase. Now coming to the conversion of T4 to T3 in peripheral tissues. There is involvement of iodothyronine deiodinases. There is involvement of the enzyme iodothyronine deiodinases, and this particular enzyme may be of D1 type, D2 type, or D3 type. There is a separate location of all these enzymes, and there are various parameters which can affect the activity of these deiodinases enzymes. There is a presence of amino acid called selenocysteine. Selenocysteine that is present in this enzyme at the active site, and that is responsible, that particular amino acid is responsible to activate the enzyme and causes the conversion of T4 to T3. Metabolism of breakage or metabolism of T4 at 5 terminal or the outer ring causes deiodination in the peripheral tissue, and this type of metabolism is responsible for the conversion to T3, and T3 is about 80% in the circulating plasma. Whereas if some metabolism or removal of iodine happens at 5 position of the inner ring, then that forms a metabolically inactive particle or inactive compound, which is known as 3,3-5-triiodothyronine, which is reverse T3. So remember, reverse T3 is metabolically inactive form of T3, which is formed when there is removal of iodine in the position of 5 of inner ring. When there is metabolism at 5' of outer ring of T4, then it forms a metabolically active T3, and that is the 80% of the whole circulating T3. So 40% of the thyroxine is converted to T3 and the reverse T3. That means 40% will be converted to T3, another 40% will be converted to a reverse T3, that is inactive compound. So here we complete 80%. The rest 20% is metabolized via other pathway, which may include glucuronidation in liver and then excretion in bile. So excretion happens in bile. So this is important over here, and you need to remember the enzyme involved, then then what is the reverse T3 and what is the T3, which one is metabolically active and which one is metabolically inactive. That much is sufficient. So this particular figure again taken from Goodman and Gilman. I have modified the figure a bit to include all the enzymes and how it is regulated. So as I told in my previous slide, there is peripheral conversion and then T4 is converted to T3 or reverse T3. So T4 is converted to reverse T3 or T4 is converted to T3, the active compound. This is inactive compound. 40% each. Okay. So this T4 to reverse T3 is mediated by the D3 type of deiodinases enzyme. Okay. And this enzyme is located mainly in placenta, skin, brain, uterus, and sites of inflammation. And these enzymes can be induced locally by inflammation, hypoxia, or any kind of tumor. There is conversion of T4 to T3, the active compound, and that happens by the help of D1 and D2 enzyme. So D1 type of deiodinases are present in liver, kidney, and thyroid, and these enzymes may be upregulated. That means the activity may be increased in case of hyperthyroidism, or it can be downregulated in case of hypothyroidism, and inhibited by propylthiouracil. So this enzyme can be inhibited by propylthiouracil. Whereas the D2 enzymes are present in brain, pituitary, heart, brown fat, skeletal muscle, and thyroid, to name a few. These enzymes can be upregulated, or the action may be increased in case of hyperthyroidism, or may be decreased in case of hypothyroidism, and they are not affected by propylthiouracil. So D1 was inhibited, D1 gets inhibited by the propylthiouracil, whereas D2 doesn't get inhibited by the use of propylthiouracil. So this is in short, in a nutshell, how the T4 is converted to reverse T3 and then T3 by the help of different deiodinases enzyme. Next is transport of thyroid hormone in the blood. So 95% is in the form of organic iodide, and then about 5% is in the form of iodide. These are transported in blood in a strong but non-covalent association with several plasma protein. With the plasma protein only it is transported, and the binding is strong, but it is not of covalent bond. So there is thyroxine binding globulin, with which it's a glycoprotein with which the thyroxine binds, and one molecule of thyroxine is bound with one thyroxine binding globulin. Only T4 thyroxine binds with transthyretin, which is a thyroxine binding albumin. So the thyroxine binds with both globulin and albumin. The globulin or the glycoprotein with which it binds is thyroxine binding globulin, whereas the albumin with which it binds is transthyretin or thyroxine binding prealbumin. This binding of thyroid hormone with the plasma protein, it protects the hormone from the metabolism and excretion, so that the half-life of this hormone is increased in the circulation. This mostly happens with all the drugs. Whenever they are in a bound form with the plasma protein, the life of that drug, that hormone, is increased. The metabolic pathway, the type of metabolism which happens with T4 and T3. So there are multiple chemical alteration or there are multiple pathways through which there is conversion of T4 to T3 to different metabolite. There may be ether cleavage, there may be deiodination, there may be conjugation, there may be oxidative decarboxylation. So upon oxidative carboxylation, the T4 is converted to T4K, which is T4 pyruvic acid, and then that can be converted to tetra. Upon conjugation reaction, that chemical reaction, there is formation of T4 sulfate and T4 glucuronide. 2,4-glucuronide. So T4G is glucuronide, T4S is T4 sulfate. When deiodination occurs, the T4 is converted to T3, reverse T3, T2-S sulfate, and then T1-S. When there is ether cleavage, there is formation of DIT, diiodothyroid. When we see about T3, when oxidative decarboxylation occurs, there is formation of the respective T3 pyruvic acid, and that is converted to triac. Upon conjugation reaction, the same T3 is converted to T3 sulfate and T3 glucuronide. And then deiodination will give this, whereas the ether cleavage of T3 will lead to formation of or release of DIT and MIT. So this was all about metabolism. Then coming to metabolism and excretion. So the whole process of metabolism takes place mostly in liver, and there may be glucuronide or sulfate conjugation, and then there is excretion of T4 and T3 in the bile. The plasma half-life of T4 thyroxine, it's not written here, but it's for thyroxine. Thyroxine is for 6 to 8 days. 6 to 8 days. Hyperthyroidism, in case of hyperthyroidism, the half-life gets decreased to T3 to 4 days. Whereas in case of hypothyroidism, when there is lesser of the thyroid hormone, then the T half is increased to 9 to 10 days. So mark the increase or decrease in the plasma half-life in case of hyperthyroidism and the hypothyroidism of T4. There is decreased clearance when there is increased binding to thyroid binding globulin. In case of pregnancy or in case of consumption of heroin, there is increased binding to this globulin, and that causes decreased clearance. When there will be increased clearance, when there is inhibition of binding with protein. Okay, when with the binding protein, then more will be excreted or cleared off. Like example, if the person is on corticosteroid treatment or androgen is taking, then there is increased clearance because of inhibition of binding with the protein. Then coming to regulation. Regulation, see. This is hypothalamus. Again, this figure is taken from Goodman and Gilman. So we have hypothalamus here. Then which regulates pituitary? So pituitary part, there are anterior pituitary and then posterior pituitary, but this we have to deal with anterior pituitary right now. So this pituitary gland will secrete, and this is the thyroid gland. So upon stimulation from hypothalamus by many factors like cold and psychosis, which stimulate the hypothalamus, there is release of TRH, thyroid releasing hormone. This will stimulate the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland in turn will cause the release of thyroid stimulating hormone. When this thyroid stimulating hormone is released from pituitary, it goes and binds with the thyroid receptor at the thyroid gland, and then it stimulates those receptors and causes the release of T4 and T3. The mediating pathway I have already told how it is released or synthesized. So when T4 and T3 is released in the blood. Now, when there is increase or decrease in T4 and T3, it may again regulate the hypothalamus and pituitary. So in case when there is excess of release or excess of concentration of T4 and T3 in the blood, it will cause negative feedback and inhibit the pituitary to cause inhibition in release of the TSH, or it may cause the inhibition of hypothalamus so that the release of TRH is inhibited. So that is negative feedback. The somatostatin itself inhibits the pituitary gland so that there is lesser release of thyroid stimulating hormone. Then we have three group of drugs: dopamine, the glucocorticoids, and then retinoids. These all adversely affect the release of thyroid hormone by inhibiting the anterior pituitary gland. The release can also be inhibited by inhibition of thyroid gland directly by giving iodine 131, or if there is high iodine. Previously I told, when there is more of iodine, that directly affects the or directly inhibits the thyroid gland to secrete T4 and T3. Then we have thioamides also, that also acts upon the thyroid gland to inhibit the secretion of T4 and T3. So this was all about the regulation of thyroid hormone. We have hypothalamus, pituitary, and then thyroid gland. Hypothalamus secretes TRH. The TRH in turn will stimulate the pituitary gland. Pituitary will release the TSH, and then TSH will go and activate the receptors of thyroid gland to cause the release of T4 and T3. When there is more of T4 and T3, this will cause negative inhibition of feedback inhibition of release of TSH from pituitary, and also inhibit the release of TRH from hypothalamus. The dopamine, glucocorticoid, and retinoid will inhibit the pituitary, anterior pituitary to release the TSH, and iodine 131, radioactive iodine, will inhibit the thyroid gland directly. High iodide also inhibit the thyroid gland directly, and thioamide also directly inhibit the thyroid gland to further release the T4 and T3. The emotional and psychological factors like cold and psychosis will stimulate the release of TRH from hypothalamus, whereas stress inhibits the release of TRH from the hypothalamus. Then coming to mechanism of action of thyroid hormone. This particular picture is taken from Sharma, I guess. I'm forgetting whether it's Sharma or Tripathi. So the mechanism of action is similar to that of corticosteroids. And what was that? It was the nuclear mediated action, nuclear mediated mechanism of action, right? So we have a thyroid hormone, the T4 and then T3. The T4 gets inside the cell, it goes into cytoplasm, and then there is a peripheral conversion by 5-deiodinases. At the 5 position, there is involvement of deiodinases to T3. Now this is the active form. It goes inside the nucleus, where it binds with its receptor, thyroid receptor, which is associated with cofactor like immunophilin and its of protein 70 and 90. And then there is dimerization occurs, duplication occurs, and that goes and binds with the specific gene of the DNA. And then there is transcription occurs, specific formation of mRNA, specific protein is synthesized, and then there is the response is given. So nuclear mediated mechanism of action is there in case of thyroid hormone also. Coming to clinical effect of thyroid hormone, in this present class I will just cover up the growth and development and maybe cardiovascular. The rest part I will be taking in my next class. So this thyroid hormone is very much essential for the growth and development of the body. As I told in the beginning only, it affects mostly all the organ system. And one of the very important example for this clinical effect on growth and development is in the amphibian, where there is a metamorphosis from a tadpole to frog. So this particular metamorphosis of tadpole to frog is because of this thyroid hormone. This is very much useful for brain development. When there is absence or inhibition of thyroid hormone, decreased amount of thyroid hormone during the period of active neurogenesis, which is usually up to 6 months of the postpartum, then what will happen? There will be irreversible mental retardation. See how dangerous it is. If there is absence of thyroid hormone during active neurogenesis, then there is irreversible mental retardation, which is known as cretinism, and is accompanied by multiple morphological alteration in brain. So highly dangerous. This is cretinism, where there is irreversible mental retardation. This can be of endemic and sporadic type. So where endemic, like it's place where it may regularly happen, whereas sporadic is like intermittently it may happen. So this endemic may be caused by the extreme iodine deficiency. The population may be taking the iodine deficient diet. So there it can be endemic, or sporadic. It may be because of abnormal thyroid development or a defect in the synthesis of thyroid hormone itself. So that may be the reason for sporadic cretinism. The patient with cretinism may come with the features of dwarfism, with short extremities, mental retardation, puffy face, enlarged tongue, dry and duffy skin, slow heart rate, constipation, and decreased body temperature. So these are the manifestations with the person having the deficiency of thyroid hormone or dealing with cretinism. The cardiovascular effect we'll see both in case of hyperthyroid and then hypothyroid state. In case of hyperthyroid, where there is increased thyroid hormone, then there may be tachycardia, the increased stroke volume, increased cardiac index, cardiac hypertrophy, decreased peripheral vascular resistance, which may cause the increased blood pressure, and increased pulse pressure. In case of hypothyroidism, there may be bradycardia, decreased cardiac index, the pericardial effusion, increased peripheral vascular resistance. Okay. Here there is increased peripheral vascular resistance, whereas in case of hypothyroidism, there is decreased peripheral vascular resistance, which will cause decreased pulse pressure, and then there is elevation of mean arterial pressure. So these are the various symptoms of manifestation which can be seen in hyperthyroid and hypothyroid state. So I'll finish up the topic till here only. In the next class, I'll continue with the pharmacological action of increased thyroid or decreased thyroid hormone states, and then I will be discussing what are the drugs which are used in case of hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, and related aspects I will be discussing in next class. Thank you so much.